Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to today's webinar on continuing education for users. This is going to be a bit of a spiritual part 2 to last week's continuing education for admins. We'll be going over the relationship between or how users interact with the added cost continuing education module. Before we get started, I did want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. Everyone's phones are muted. If you have any questions during this webinar, please enter those in the Zoom chat window. This meeting will be recorded and will be available on both our YouTube channel and on ClubExpress.com. If you want to register for upcoming webinars, make sure to go to ClubExpress.com and click on our calendar page. If you register for a webinar ahead of time, there's actually a place where you can put in questions or any demonstrations you'd like to see on upcoming webinars. If you would like to, when you're on our YouTube channel watching any of our past webinars or training videos, you can subscribe to our channel. That way you get updated whenever we have new materials put out on ClubExpress. If you are using ClubExpress and you've really liked it, we would love if you would leave us a review. You can leave our reviews at clubexpress.com/reviews. We love to hear from our users. So today we'll be talking about how users interact with the continuing education module. This is an extra cost feature. Currently, it is a $1,000 one-time charge. So once you pay for it, you have it forever. We'll be going over how users request credit for courses and accomplishments they've taken either outside or on your website so that they can then be eligible for certificates on your website. We'll also go over how users submit applications for available certificates. We'll review how people register for events and then also how they receive credit for attending those events and how that credit applies to the continuing education module. And we'll also do a brief overview of how you can use the ad hoc forms module to present assessments to your users, and we'll look at what that looks like from the user side. And then we'll also talk briefly just about what it looks like when you have an organization that has printable certificates in the continuing education module. So first, we're going to talk about points. This is actually something that we talked about last week. It's you can call them whatever you like in your organization. Some people call them credits. Some people call them points. Whatever you use to track the required learning for using the continuing education module in order to grant certificates. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to one of our demo sites so I can walk you through what that looks like for a user. So you can see here, I'm logged into the Northwest Suburbs Chamber of Commerce. This is our demo chamber website. Right now, you can see in the top right, I'm logged in as Jenny Cho. She is not an administrator. Jenny Cho is just a member of the Northwest Suburbs Chamber of Commerce. If Jenny were to try to request points for, say, attending an outside course, what she can do, there are two ways to approach this. She can go to the continuing education module, which we have here under career. And once in the module, we will see all of our available certificates and information about them. And you'll see on this page, when you're logged in as a member, there is a button just above all of the available certificates that says My CE Points, which stands for Continuing Education Points. If you have configured this to be named, say, credits, the different terminology you have for it will appear here. Clicking on these points will take us to this page. Now, this is the specific users. This is Jenny Cho's page for her information on continuing education. What we can do on this page is there's a button for adding points. So we can say Jenny Cho has received, say, her bachelor's degree, and she can come in here and request points for attending that bachelor's degree. And so we can, whatever questions are required for that point type, which if you want to see how this point type is configured, that would be something we covered in last week's webinar, the continuing education for admins. I'm going to go ahead and fill this out and say we started school in August of 2010 and graduated in March of 2014. And we can also fill in just information about our university, their major and their minor. And what you can also do is you can upload any documents. Say if Jenny Cho has her diploma, she can fill in the title of her diploma and then upload her diploma here by clicking on choose file. This is not a required field for someone to fill in, but it does give them the option to put in attached documentation for any points that they are requesting. And you'll see you have two options. You can choose to save as a draft this points request, or you can submit for approval. If you save as a draft, that'll mean that you have begun logging the information. But if, let's say, you got to this point and you didn't quite have your information fully in order yet, and you needed to come back to this and update, say, your major, your minor, any of the information you logged, you can come back to this and then submit for approval, or you can submit for approval right away. Once you submit for approval, it is going to send this to the administrators or coordinators of the continuing education module. And any points that are requested have to be approved by that administrator. The points that are then collected can be applied towards your continuing education certificates. There is not a way for a member to submit points and have them automatically be applied to their account. It does always have to be approved by an administrator. There are also ways for members to submit their own points. So they can say when they're adding points, I'm not sure if we have a type set up for it at the moment, but when a member submits a point request, they can say, I think this is worth, this many points or this many credits. And then it is up to the administrator to say whether or not that amount of points is appropriate for the point type that they're requesting. So say if someone hosted a webinar or someone completed, attended all of the meetings and they say, I think that's worth this many points, it's up to the administrator to approve or decline that and maybe get in contact with them and say, actually, it's only worth this many points, or actually it's worth more points than you're assuming. From the administrator side, we looked at last week the approvals screen. So I'm going to leave that for last week's webinar. But this is how we apply for points. This is also the same page where someone can come in their system and request a renewal, which we'll review momentarily. And also they can use this page to apply for a new certificate if they have the if they believe they have the requirements filled out. Another way to access this page where people can access points, so you don't always have to go just through the continuing education module. Members can actually also go to their own profile. So if I navigate up to Jenny Cho's name up here and click on profile, I will get taken to my own member profile. And right here under more member options, we will have this continuing education button that they can click on, and they'll get taken back to the same page where they can add points. So they can review their existing certificates, their renewals, and add points requests from this same page without having to go directly into the module. It takes them to the same page either way. So now we're going to look at applying for certifications. So it's a very similar process. When a member comes into the continuing education module, they're presented with these certificates that we configured last week. You can see the qualifications and requirements here. And if they read these certificates and say, hey, I qualify and I meet all of the requirements for the certificate, they can choose to apply. Now with applications, there's no limitation to someone applying. It always, just like points, always has to be approved by an administrator. But if a user doesn't meet the requirements, then the administrator would need to decline that application. But there's nothing stopping them from saying, I would like this certification ahead of time. So if we go ahead and apply for this investor membership certificate, we can click apply here. And you can optionally have them have to agree to a terms and conditions for that certificate. And then they're presented any required charges, any required fees that are a part of that certificate will have to be paid before that application will show up on the approval screen for the administrators. So once I complete this application, I'll be given a payment page and I can either pay it immediately. We don't have this site set up to submit payment just yet, but if we were to submit payment, the status of this application would change to pending, and an administrator would see it on their approvals page. If we don't pay for it and say done, it'll stay in the applied status, and it won't show up on the approvals page until a member pays for that certificate. If they are declined, there can be credits or refunds that you can do after that. But they do have to pay for it in order for that application to go through to the administrator. Similarly, with the points requests, they can also access all of those applications through their own user profile. So again, that's just clicking on their profile, going to more member options and continuing education. And we can see the status of all of our current applications. And so you can see here for this mentorship certificate, I have applied, but it is not yet pending until I pay for it. Once it is paid for, then the administrators can come in and approve it, and you will then have that certificate for as long as the duration of the certificate is set up for. If you do allow your certificate to expire, there is an option to renew a certificate. So similarly to before, you can either come to this page through the member's profile and choose to renew a certificate. So if you have a certificate that has come to its expiration date and gone past, they will have the option to renew that certificate so that they can access it or continue to have that certificate again. Now, this is different from applications. You can set a certificate to not allow a member to even request to renew if they don't have enough points. So right now, Jenny Cho only has 5 points, which is not currently enough for this certificate. This certificate has been set up to allow her to renew even if she doesn't have enough points, but there is an option that we reviewed last week where you can turn that off, and this button would not show up until she has enough points to renew. That renewal page is very simple. It looks almost exactly like the application page. It'll give you all of your required fees and then additional optional fees, which can be set up for that certificate. And similarly to before, if we don't pay for it, it will just go into the pending status until she pays, and then it'll show up for approval for administrators. Another thing we wanted to cover today is how members can earn more points directly through your website. There are 2 ways that your members can earn points straight from your website without having to do anything external. Most people that use the continuing education module, most of their education is either through an external company or say even through like we showed earlier, your different degrees that earn you points towards your certificates. You do have the option to say if you attend certain events, you earn credit for attending events. So if we go to our event calendar, this is something we also reviewed last week in the setup for administrators. But as a member, if we go and look at our calendar, what we can do is we can look at events, and on our membership side, we can see this event is eligible for 5 education credits. So if I, as a member, register for this event, right now, Jenny Cho is actually already registered for this event, but if she registers for this event, she'll be eligible to receive those 5 education points. The issue is we don't get those points just by registering. We get those points by attending this event. So an administrator, after the event is set up and after Jenny Cho has registered for this event, would have to mark Jenny Cho as having attended this event. And so once attendance is taken for that event and marked as an administrator, once those are marked, you'll see Jenny Cho has been marked as attended for this event. And so if we go into her profile and go to event history, we'll see she is marked as having registered and recorded attending this event. And I'm just simply looking at her event history right now. So that's under histories, event history. We can see we've attended this event and an administrator has marked us as attending this event. And because of that, under her continuing education, she received those 5 points for attending this event. Now, these points do not need to be approved. Once she is marked as having attended this event, the points are automatically approved for her because she attended this event. Another way that administrators give points to users on their website is by offering what's called either some sort of ad hoc form. We are calling them assessments. And so when an administrator sets up an assessment on their site through ad hoc forms, you can create a link to that. Either you can directly link to that form on your menu or create a custom page or put it on your homepage, links to those assessments. So what we've done here is we've created a custom page with information about available assessments to our member. And those assessments can be set up to have any number of questions you like. And you can even do things like put a fee for taking an assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and take this marketing assessment right here. And if I click on this link, it's going to take us into this ad hoc form where it'll then ask me questions. These are just some simple, placeholder questions. You can have as many as you'd like or as few as you would like. And once we answer these questions, we can then submit this form. Upon submitting the form, a notification is going to go to the administrator or user listed as the notified user for ad hoc forms. Once that notification goes out, it is up to the administrator to come in and grade this form. The form cannot be set up to grade automatically. So just like in school, someone has to go through the questions and say correct, incorrect, and then give them a grade. And if they pass, then they can notify that user that they are receiving points for that assessment. This assessment has actually been set up to require payment. And so right here, you can see I answered the questions for that ad hoc form, and now it is requesting me to pay for that form. This form will not be fully submitted until I submit payment for it. If you create a form that does not require payment, it'll skip right past this payment page, and it'll submit the form to the administrator for them to grade that assessment, and then send the administrator can then manually add the points to that user's profile. The next thing I wanted to talk about is what it looks like for non-members who use the continuing education module. So continuing education is available to non-members. You can allow, now this is an optional thing, you can limit your continuing education to members simply from the control panel by changing the availability of continuing education. And I'll switch over to the admin view in just a minute to show you a few of these settings, just to review from last week. But if I log out, I still have the option here to go to the continuing education module. You'll notice it says member login right here. Right now, I am not logged into the site. And so the site thinks I am a non-member. If I go to this continuing education module, you'll notice I do not have the My Continuing Education points right here. I can, however, apply for one of these certificates. So what this means is an administrator would have to manually enter the points for a non-member or record externally that a non-member meets the requirements for a certificate. But once that is done, if a non-member applies for a certificate, they would have to fill in all of their information, confirm the certificate they're applying for, and then go through the same steps we saw for our members where they pay any associated fees. And once they have paid, it will be available for them to be approved. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you the administrative side of what it looks like for recording points for non-members and also approving those member and non-member submitted applications. So I'm going to go ahead and switch screens real quick. So now I'm logged in to the same demo website, but this time as an administrator, Martin Smith. And so if I go to my control panel, the first thing I'll review that we mentioned just a minute ago, under the chamber, for some organizations, it'll be club or association or organization, but it's the tab just before communications right here is where you will find continuing education. Right now, you'll see we've got this little tag right here that says PM, which means this is a module set up to be available to both the public and to members. If we wanted to limit this to not be allowed to non-members, we can click on this configure icon right here, go to our continuing education, and we can change our visibility between either members only or any website visitor. If we were to change this to members only and save, that module would no longer be accessible for non-members. If we go into our continuing education module here, I'm just going to do a brief review of some of the things we covered last week. If you weren't available to make our webinar last week, I do recommend, for more of this to make sense, that you watch last week's webinar. It should be up on our YouTube channel and on clubexpress.com. If you go to this page as an administrator, we have our approvals page where we can see we've got approvals for both points and certificates. And right here, we can see Jenny Cho. This is that points request that I submitted earlier. There is not a number of points associated with it because it is up to the administrator to set the points for this one. But this is where we can come in and say, all of this seems in order. If Jenny Cho submitted her, say, her degree along with her application, it would show up here as well. And you can approve however many points you think are appropriate for that application. You can choose to approve or decline. And then additionally, under approvals, this is where we can, as administrators, approve the applications for certificates. And so here we will also see all of our paid applications. Now, Jenny Cho has not yet paid for her application, so she will not show up on this page just yet. If we go to our people manager, so we're going to go back to our control panel and go over to people. And if we click on people manager, this is where we're going to go to manage our non-members point requests. So if we want to manage points for, say, a non-member that gets in contact or has applied for a certificate, we can change our search to non-members. We can either search by last name or just hit search to see a full list of non-members. And so for any of our non-members, this last icon on the people manager is where we will see more options. And under more options for our non-members, you will see you have a continuing education history option. This page right here is going to be very similar to our members continuing education page, but this is for a non-member. Now, the non-member themselves cannot access this because they can't log into the website, but we as administrators can come in here and we can add points requests for a non-member so that they can build up enough points to apply for a certificate. Or once they've applied for a certificate and they've informed us of how many points they should have available to them, you can add points to the non-member record right in here. And as an administrator, we can go ahead and approve those right away. So if we were to add points for this member, we could say they've received a degree. They attended from 2014 to 2018. And again, we can fill in their degree or their diploma here. We can submit for approval. And as administrators, we should be able to, oh, I'm sorry. Again, we do have to go back to our continuing education module. But once we've submitted this points request for this non-member, we can go back to our continuing education module. And that points request for that non-member is going to show up right here where we can then approve it or decline it. And you can also bulk approve multiple requests if people have submitted multiple and you know they all are available for approval. And that is how we manage that information for non-members. There's not quite as much to cover for the user side of continuing education. So I'll go ahead and open it up for a bit of a Q&A if anyone has questions. Sam, I know we ran a little quick on this one.
Yeah, so there was actually a question about some of the materials that might be included. Is there a way to link continuing education with the storefront so that you would be able to sell, say, they brought up the e-textbook within one of the required fees. Would there be a way to sell the e-textbook through the storefront for a club?
Yeah, you can definitely sell that through your storefront. There is not a way to link the two together intrinsically, but what you can do is you can offer it for sale on your storefront or offer it for sale through your continuing education module. But purchasing it through the storefront wouldn't immediately mark it as purchased already in the continuing education module. So that's something. So if we were to look at our certifications, I know our women in business mentorship certification, the fees for that one are right here. And so we have our e-textbook. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. That was in a different. Either way, so you can set up. Yeah, Sam, do you remember where the optional one
Yeah.
was set up?
So I think female entrepreneurship is one of the fake. If you go back into the fees for women in business,
Oh, okay.
and
Oh,
it's
here we
yeah,
go.
that one right there. So if we open, these are all sort
Yeah,
of
there we
fake
go.
fees that we configured to perform these webinars.
So yeah, so this is an example of we could set up our fee here, or we could create a storefront item. I don't believe we have the storefront set up on this demo site at the moment, but you can create a storefront item that is the exact same price and allow people to purchase that textbook directly through the storefront. The only caveat there is that there's the potential for someone to pay for it in the storefront and then sign up for the certificate and optionally pay for it an additional time. You That shouldn't be much of an issue for most people because this is optional. It won't be checked by default. So right here, you can see variable fees. Yes, it's not a required fee for them to pay.
And you had talked about events and pairing events with continuing education, and when people go to register for them, they can see that they carry credit. Could you show that event item and what
Yeah.
that would look like?
So yeah, I'll actually cover two things. These are things that we talked about last week, but it's not going to hurt anyone to cover it just a little bit again. So we have our point types. And on our point types, we have a default amount of points that are available for a specific application. So what we did for, let's say for our events, we did a webinar for our Northwest Suburbs team, and that is why it was worth 5 points. So we can go look through these and say, if we have an event that's worth, say, a board presentation that's worth 60 points if you attend it, we can go create an event, which is under our website tab. And if we click on events, we can search for an existing event. We'll say this is taking place on the 1st, and we actually only need our registration and fees page. So if we go to our registration and fees part of our event creation, at the bottom of this event, there is a checkbox under attendance that says this event is eligible for continuing education credit. Once we check this box, it's going to ask us, what type of point is this for? And there's the same list of point types we were looking at just a second ago. And so we can say this is a final board presentation event, and you'll see it'll pre-fill the default amount of points that this is worth. So anyone who is marked as attending, you do have to say, yes, we are tracking attendance. Because if someone isn't tracked as attending an event by an administrator, then they will not receive these points for registering. They have to both register and then be marked attended, and they would automatically get the 60 points right here. And those points would not need to be approved. So once we save this, if we go back to this page, this administrator page, there's 2 ways we can go and track people as having attended. On the icons in the upper right over here, we have our little, the second icon looks like a group of people. That is our attendance tracking icon, where you can come in here as administrator and mark attendance for registered members. You can actually also register and mark members at the same time. So if you had someone who got in contact with you and said, hey, I attended this event, but I forgot to register ahead of time, you can check them here and mark them as registered. And it will automatically both register and mark them as attended, meaning they would get those continuing education points. Or additionally, you can come and click on this eyeball here. This is the event as a whole. And as an administrator, when you're looking at it, you will see this mark attendance button, which will give us a page. Right now, we don't have any registrants for this event, but if we had someone who had registered, it would give us a page with their information. We can click on their names and mark them as attended. And again, once they are marked as attended, they will immediately receive those continuing education points.
All right. I don't think that we have any other questions. So, Devin, I will leave it to you.
All right. Yeah, this was a bit of a shorter one. It's more of a part 2 to the last week's webinar. If you have any questions about this, please reach out to us. And this is just something you can share with your members who are looking to sign up for continuing education points or start receiving certificates. If you're interested in enabling the continuing education module and you haven't done so already, you can reach out to support@clubexpress.com or give us a call. You can get our number just at clubexpress.com. And you can reach out to us and we'll start the process of enabling that tool on your website. Thank you so much for attending. This is a bit of a short webinar today, but hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.